Hi, this is Kim Siebold again, and I first of all want to turn down this audio just a hair. I hope that doesn't make too much of a difference. We'll see what happens. The last lecture I did, it sounded too loud. Anyway, what I wanted to do is talk to you about photographs and how we use photographs to help us answer historical questions. So, let's go back here. We'll talk about this photograph in a little while. Um, I just wanted to show you my PowerPoint skills and my ability to turn the color of the photograph. Anyway, okay, so what can a photograph tell you? Well, we can go through all of these. The people in the event, the place, the setting, place and setting. Place would be like if it's at your house. The setting would be, okay, what does the room look like? How's the room set up? It can tell you a date or approximate date. It can tell you a person's social status, change over time, types of goods and services available, things of importance to a town or family, how people lived, why they lived as they did. It can tell you about births and weddings, deaths, military service, school attendance. I mean, we all have been in those wonderful school photographs. Holidays celebrated, religious occasions, relationships. Oh, we could just go on for what a photograph can tell you. But you only get as much out of the photograph as you can glean. So I wanted to just kind of start this off by, at the end of this, we'll talk a little bit more about, how to read a photograph. So where do you start? Well, I would purchase a book by Maureen Taylor called Uncovering Your Ancestry Through Photographs, through Family Photographs. And I like this book. Again, it's genealogy oriented, and you'll find a lot of the resources that I use for this class are genealogy oriented, but we're placing things more in their social history context. And the other thing is, you can take the rules and techniques that they use for reading your family history, for doing it for town history or other projects. So it's not just limited to family history. She goes a great deal into the different types of photographs and how you can tell the difference and all that sort of thing, and she gives great references to other books, like how to date costumes or clothing. So there's just a lot of information in this book if you are really interested in learning more about photographs and how to read photographs. The other thing I would encourage you to do is, if you have a lot of family photos, I would take a course, and sometimes the Maine State Archives offers this course. I bet you could find something online too about preserving photographs. Okay, if you have a family photograph, you could always ask your relatives to help you identify the people, and you can combine an oral history with the photographs. You could also ask a town, if it's a town photograph or something beyond family history, you could ask somebody to help you with it. I don't know if any of you, well, some of you might know him. I guess a lot of you aren't in Presque Isle, but Presque Isle, there is an eye doctor, and his name is Richard Graves, or Dick Graves, and his family has been in Presque Isle for several generations, and he loves old photographs. And so he has a ton of them. People have just given them to him over the years. He's bought some off of eBay. He's got old postcards, So he just loves old photographs. So one day he was doing a tour for the Historical Society. I asked him what he was gonna do with all his photographs, and he said, "Oh, well, when I die, I imagine my kids will just throw them away because they really don't care about them." And of course, that just kind of made me cringe. And so what we started to do is, he and I met for probably 2 or 3 years on and off, and We sat down with a tape recorder, we numbered all of his photographs, labeled them, and then he would talk about each photograph. So in the recording, there was some way to identify what he was saying to the photograph that we were talking about. And so I have all of that information. And eventually he worked with another class of mine, and they put together a book for him based on his photographs and his writings, because he writes articles for the Star Herald. And it's called Forgotten Time. So it kind of, went from this project just between the two of us to something that was a lot bigger and a lot more satisfying. But again, I mean, now we digitized all of his photographs. So, well, he's probably got more since then, but we've digitized quite a bit of his photographs. We have them preserved, and we have his record of what was in the photograph. So, again, I say ask somebody who considers themselves a town historian. Now, you have to take everything with a grain of salt that somebody tells you. You have to back it up with other evidence. But though every town has somebody like Dick Graves, and they're a treasure trove if you know how to use them correctly. And so, all the work I've ever done, even when I was working for the Park Service and doing work in New Jersey, I did a lot of oral interviews and used a lot of photographs in those interviews with people who like to collect things. And, I was always courteous, never told them if I thought they were wrong or anything like that. But, I gleaned their information and got lots of good nuggets from them, took what I could use. So I encourage you, if you ever wanted to embark on such a project, it's actually a fun thing to do. You're going to need to familiarize yourself with the events of the time period, and that's true for any project that you're going to do, whether it's family, local, what have you. You want to know what's going on in the larger picture so you can establish the context. I would create a research log for each photograph. Now, I didn't do that with Dick because we had our own little system going. But I would include things like the names of the people you talked to for each photograph in this log. The names of the people talked to, the questions you asked them, and the responses they gave, whether you have it on tape or you write it down. Again, if you do something like I did with Dick Graves, you want to make sure that you have a way to connect the photos with the interviews. So always label your photographs with a number that connects back to the interview. So, for example, if I did an interview with Dick Graves and I did a series of them, I would number them this way. Tape 2005, which is the year, .1. So that would have been the first tape or the first interview I did with him in the year 2005. And then for the photograph, I would name it 2005.1.1. So I know it's the first interview of 2005, and that's the first photograph in that interview. So that's the system that I would have created. In your research log, you want to take down notes and what you found and where you found it. It's always good so you don't repeat yourself and go backwards. I can't emphasize enough of having a research journal or a research log that lets you know, oh yeah, I checked this piece of information out and this is what I found, because I guarantee you if you go back a year from now, you're not going to remember that you did it. And that's especially true for those of you who are doing a master's degree. I would make sure that I documented everything I did and when I did it, so that you don't retrace your steps. Take it from me, I know. And make sure you write down your bibliographic information on all the materials that you used. And again, I would put where you found it, so if you needed it, you could go back and find it. Take notes on websites, just like for the bibliographic information and everything. I'd write down what I found, what the website was, the date I did it. The same would go if I was in the library and I picked up a book. I'd write down the notes, the date that I looked at it, and what I found in it, and the bibliographic information. Anything that you use to help you identify the photograph and learn more about it, I would write that down. But let me just say this from a side, not just for photographs, but for any research project you were doing, I would still have a journal that would help me understand what it was that I did. And I have to say that if you pick up any books on genealogy, or if you even looked at Ancestry, or just Googled a genealogy site, genealogists are highly organized and they have great log sheets for writing down your information and where you found it and all that. And I encourage you to look at that if you embark on a big research project. Well, even if you did it for this class, I would encourage it, because then you have stuff, you have proof, you have backup. And so you want to make sure that when you talk to people, you have your thoughts organized. And that's true for whether you're talking about a photograph, doing an oral interview, anything like that. And the research log helps to keep you organized. All right, so what can a photograph tell you? It can tell you dates by the type of photograph it is. And I'm not going to go into that. If you want to know more about different types of photograph, you can go to the website that I have here and look at that. But the other thing, so the type of photograph can tell you a date, but the things in the photograph can tell you a date. So you want to look for cars, the type of dress, telephone lines. If you know when the telephone lines came to your town, or when the electric lines came to your town, that can help you provide a date window. You know, you can kind of you can kind of estimate the date based on what's in the photograph, if you know when certain things showed up. Hold on 1 minute. I've got to have a... Oops. All right, let's see if I can continue on with this without dying. Sorry about that. Did I finish that other? Yeah, okay. Clothing is a great thing to use for identifying time frames in a photograph. Plus, clothes can tell you things about social status, whether it's a special occasion, all that kind of stuff. And again, if you go back and get the book that I was telling you about, she really goes into a lot of detail about clothing and how it can help you. Family photographs. You can look for family resemblances. I'm not going to go through all of this, but you know, you can figure out whether or not you think somebody is part of your family based on the way they look. Of course, that's a little bit more of an inference, right? We talked about inferred historical context, right? But still, it would give you a place to start, and you could then go from there and ask other people if you're right. You could go, if you have a professional photographer, if it's a photo by a professional photographer, you can see if you can find when that person was in business, and that can help you date stuff as well. You can look at the props used by the photographer. The purpose of props was to add interest to the photograph, but it can tell you something more about the people and the photograph depending on what kinds of props they picked and stuff like that. You can also look at backdrops. You can look at how people are posing. Just be careful about that, because in some of the older photographs, if you think everybody didn't smile and they look stiff, it is because they couldn't move. So that's why they look the way they do. But later on, when people could move, you would get more in the terms of backdrops and props, and that can help you give clue to a person's personality, their character, that sort of thing. Even what they're willing to spend, right, on a photograph. Look at the land. You can use photographs to look at landscapes. And again, you can look at, what's around it, try to identify things. If it's a parade, look at what the people are wearing to see if you can figure out what kind of a parade it is. If it's a farm, look at how the buildings are arranged. So what I want you to do is, it's not just about looking at the photograph, it's about taking and looking at each detail of the photograph and picking those details apart, and then going and doing outside research so that you can help classify or contextualize those details. I love aerial photographs or streetscapes because it can really show you change over time, and that's one of the things with Dick Graves's photographs. You can really see change over time in Presque Isle. Photographs could give you clues to ethnic and religious preferences. Or ethnic backgrounds and religious preferences. Again, you have to do some outside research to know what ethnic, what do I want to say, what kinds of things they wore, what traditions they had, and things like that. But once you knew that and you could identify it in the photograph, it gives you a backup, right? To know, okay, this person must have been a member of this ethnic group, all right? And again, it's still inferred. You still have to keep going for those details, but it helps to put the picture together. And the same way with religion. You can look at what kinds of things are in the backgrounds of a church if you want to try to figure out what religion it is. You can also look at how the church is built on the outside. You can even, look at the graveyard next to it. That can also give you some clues as well. All right, so I wanted to take some photographs and just talk to you about what you could tell about this photograph. So I picked this photograph. This is actually a photograph from Fort Fairfield, I believe. And it gives you evidence here of there's at least 4 children in this family. They're all girls. You can look at how they're dressed. You can see the mother's back here in her, it looks like she's got a stole on and a pretty fancy hat. So it makes you wonder if she wasn't actually preparing herself for the photograph. It wasn't just something that was taken at random, right? You know that there are 3 men. It looks like they're men in the photograph, and you can one of them might be the father. You could also think about if one of them was hired hands, is one of them an older brother. There's things you could ask questions about. The details of the house. It's a pretty good sized house, but it's not very ornate, right? There's no real trim on it. It's just a plain farmhouse, so that might give you a clue to the status. If you were actually redoing this house, this photograph would be really great. It shows you the placement of chimneys. So if somebody had taken out the fireplaces at one point in time and you wanted to, if you have this house and you wanted to restore it, oh, well, then that gives you some clue to the fireplaces and what they look like. It gives you clues to the window and the encasements and what they look like. It looks like they have like a root cellar off to the side here, or access to a basement off to the side here. I bet if you blew this up a little bit more, this might tell you something about the foundation of the house. Again, you'd have to know stuff about architectural styles, but there are great books out there about that. So there's lots of things that this photograph can tell you depending on what you're using it for. If you blew it up, you can figure out what she's got in her hands here. I'm not sure if you can completely see it, but it might give you some idea of what she has there in her hands. So that's with that photograph. This is a streetscape of Presque Isle. It's a parade, some kind of a military parade, as you can see, because these guys are dressed in um, military uniforms. Um, if you can notice the street lamps, right? There are no lines here, so there's nothing there to indicate telephone or electricity. So to me, that kind of puts it maybe in the World War I era. But if you blew this up and you looked at these uniforms a little bit more, plus the clothing that these people have on, you could probably tell. Here's a guy here on a bicycle. If you blow this up, you can see the names of the proprietors, what kind of stores they were. That gives you some clues. Again, the architecture of the buildings and how the buildings are connected give you some clues. So there's lots of things that this can tell you, and you can see that quite a few people are out here for this parade. If you know anything about flags and you blew this up, and you could see more of the shape of the stars on the flags, that could give you a clue. So there's lots of things that you can look at and you can blow these photographs up, but because I put them in PowerPoint, there's not really much I can do with them, but I just wanted to show you that. I was doing a project with Fort Fairfield. This isn't Fort Fairfield, this is Presque Isle again. And we started blowing up the names of the signs, or the signs on the buildings, and we found that Fort Fairfield in the early 1900s actually had a Chinese laundry, which I thought was kind of interesting. If you know Presque Isle, this is actually looking north on Main Street. This is today where, I can't remember if it's an Elks Lodge or a Moose Lodge or what it is, but this is a fraternal order, right? And it's where the bowling alley is. If you go upstairs, there's a bowling alley up there. At this point, it's a garage. These are very early cars. So again, you have to go and find out your cars, but again, there are books out there that can help you. If you blow things up a little bit more, you might be able to make out the license plates, and that can help you out. Again, if you blew up things a little bit more, you could see what were in these windows. I think this is where the Key Bank is today in Presque Isle. This building no longer exists, although it looks a lot like the building across the street from it. So there's lots of things that you could look at. Oh, and you notice here, what do you notice here? There's some kind of electric line or a telephone line there. So that could give you some clues to the date of things as well. And you notice how the cars are parked on a diagonal. If you go to Presque Isle now, it's all parallel parking. And it doesn't look like the macadam or a tar road. It looks almost to me like it might be dirt, but I could be wrong. Or compacted dirt. You could probably blow this up and look at what this man is wearing as well. So there's some clues to that in that photograph as well. One thing that I found kind of interesting that in the book that I mentioned earlier, she was talking about popular magazines. If you go into popular magazines and look at how they suggest women decorate, that could give you clues to the interior of a house, which made me think about the Sears and Roebuck catalog. If you've ever looked at a old Sears and Roebuck catalog, you'd find a lot of interesting things, including clothing type and medicine, farm equipment, all that kind of stuff that could help with photographs. Other documents that could help too would be marriage certificates, death certificates, not limited to those, but to lots of different things, lots of other things as well. I wanted to just take a minute and see if, oh, here it is. This is a photograph that came out of My Family Photographs. Nobody seems to know who this person is, although he looks a lot like, I think he looks a lot like my grandfather when he was young. But my mother insists that it isn't him. Um, but I think this is just such a wonderful photograph. I mean, you can look at the tie, right? And the tie style that could help you out. The model of the car. Um, you can look at even the haircuts. Look at the wonderful haircuts on these girls. Or she's actually wearing it looks like some kind of a bandana or a kerchief or something of that sort. But even, kind of the make of her clothes at the top. Um, I think, I just think this is such an awesome picture, and yet I kind of sad because um, I don't know who these people are. Um, Here's some other photograph. This is my see my great great grandfather and his wife, and he's actually a Civil War veteran. But here is a great picture or a great example of people looking stern. And I think that part of it is because of the photographer, and they have to be really, really still in order for the picture to take. I believe this is the same man, my great great grandfather, just a little bit of an earlier age. I'm going to just kind of go through this. This is actually a picture of my great grandfather, and we believe this might be my great grandfather as well. Again, looking kind of stern. This is my grandfather. I know that for a fact. This is a picture. This would tell you a lot about my family. This is actually my grandfather here, and this is my father, and this is my father's nephew. This is actually a cousin, but it's my father's nephew. So you can automatically, if you know that relationship, then you can think, my dad must come from several children, and they must have some years between them, which is true. His oldest sister, I think there was 10 years between them. However, I do think she was pregnant pretty early, probably around 17 or 18, which is why they seem a little bit close in age. You can tell that my grandfather had a commercial spraying business, which my father actually inherited and continued doing. They actually whitewash barns for a living. Whitewash is lime and water, and it was a form of sanitation, early sanitation. But again, you can look at the model of the truck. You can look at the clothes they're wearing, although they're pretty. You can see they're pretty everyday clothes. They weren't poor by any means, but they weren't wealthy either. Actually, my grandfather went bankrupt in the Depression. He borrowed the money to start this spraying business, and within a year he paid back all the money that he had borrowed for the business. And like I said, the business continued until my father died. So let's see, my father looks like he must be 10 here, so I would say this is probably sometime in the early 40s. But if any of you know more about cars than I do and think it's a little bit later or earlier, let me know. I guess that's all I had. I thought I had more there. Oops. Let me see. Oops, must have. Oh, well, you don't need to know anymore. So anyway, I hope that helps you a little bit with looking at photographs and how they can be helpful. If you have any questions, let me know. But I really encourage you to go pick up the book that I mentioned in the beginning, which is Maureen Taylor's Uncovering Your Ancestry Through Family Photographs. That is, you don't have to pick it up for this class, but if you want to do more with your own family or with your own research, I think this book is a good book to start. So thanks for listening, and I'll talk to you later.